Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast. We help people to combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Bruna De Palo. Bruna is an ICF certified executive leadership and career coach with a unique, innovative, and practical evidence-led neuroscience-based approach that empowers people to understand why the brain triggers certain behaviors and how to optimize its functions. With the ability to bring cutting-edge neuroscience concepts to life through practical frameworks and tools, she helps people stop acting as human doings and start living as human beings and find a career that makes them feel alive at work. So please welcome to the show, Bruna De Palo. Bruna, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Bob. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Well, if we could, let's tell our audience a little bit about you and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, thank you for giving me this opportunity. That's my favorite story. Because if you want to talk about encouragement, that's exactly what my story stands for. So I come from 20 years in the wrong career. Nothing wrong with a career in IT, of course. It was just wrong for me. And the reason I ended up in a career I clearly didn't belong to is because, I don't know, I didn't know what to do. I just needed money. You know, I was young. I was doing what I was supposed to do. It wasn't a time where you were thinking about purpose, meaning, values, and so on. The conversation at that time was very different. Like, that's what brings money. Go for it.
Right.
Yeah. And then I did it. And then, of course, I felt unfulfilled after the initial couple of years where you're learning a lot. Then I started feeling that I wasn't there. I was just earning money. I mean, today is a very common story, but at that time we didn't talk about this. So I thought it was normal.
Right.
And I was living in Italy. That's where I'm from. I'm from Rome. And yes, it's a very beautiful city, but yes, there's a very stuck mentality. Mm-hmm. You're lucky if you have a job, if you have a good contract, that's it. Wow. There's no option of thinking of wanting something different. So that's where I've been for 20 years. I didn't know I could have changed. I didn't know what else I could do. I was really, really stuck mentally. But then I decided that this shouldn't be it. That life is probably meant to be more. You're meant to give more. You're meant to get more. I remember I was working and always looking outside of the window and sensing that there was life out there. But I don't know because I'm here every day, 9 to 5. It was, very disappointing that I wasn't able to get out of this. But the reason I wasn't able is because I didn't know what else I could do.
Right.
And I had a mortgage and I was alone. I mean, the usual problems that everyone else has. And then at one point I decided, okay, maybe the problem is the mentality, is the mindset. So let me go to another city in another country. That's why I moved to London in UK. And I say, I'll go there. There will be more open-minded people. And then maybe I can change my career. So I came here, full of hopes. And then what I ended up doing again was another career in IT.
Yeah.
Why? Because the mindset follows you.
Yeah.
If you don't stop and work on it, it doesn't matter. Of course, it's true that the people you hang out with have a huge impact on how your brain is shaped. But if you go there and you don't make a profound change, you're going to be in the same situation. So to cut the story short, it took a long time for me and a lot of painful mistakes to finally realize that what was wrong, it wasn't me. It was the way I was thinking about a career. So I realized that career is not just something that you do. What is meant to be, given that it's, many of the hours of your life, it's meant to be an expression of your being.
Wow.
And what I needed to pursue, it wasn't just being happy. Mm-hmm. I mean, what does it mean, Bob, being happy?
Right.
Good boss? Yes, I'm happy. Bad boss? I'm unhappy. I wanted something more or less fluctuating than happiness. And I realized it was fulfillment. But fulfillment is not about what you do, it's about how you feel about what you do. So what I realized is I wasn't paying attention to the emotional side of things, because when you're doing stuff, you become a human doing.
Yes.
Emotions, business, the two things don't match.
Right.
So there's been a huge revolution. And again, mistake after mistake, I realized that if I wanted to feel fulfilled, I should have felt alive. And if I keep looking for a job based on my CV and skills and experiences, I'm going to be trapped again.
Yeah.
So if I want to be alive, I have to think about what makes me feel alive, have the courage to believe that there must be a match in the job market, and then follow that path. So that's how it all went. And I am so grateful I did, because I can really say that I've turned my poison into medicine.
Right.
Because my job when I decided to become a coach was exactly helping people who were in the same stage find themselves again, gather that confidence, and then finally find a match in the job market, and then transit to a new career that will make them feel alive.
Wow.
So with this, I feel excited and happy. And I don't regret that much anymore, those 20 years, because I can see there was a meaning in that complicated journey.
Right. And that there's a lot of people that are in that same boat, and it's good to know you help to, you live that shift so people can do that too. You have the experience of what's been going on with that. I find it interesting because you say that you work on brain triggers and how that, functions in your life. Tell us more about that, because I think that's so critical with what you went through and what a lot of other people may be going through. How does, our brain trigger us into, like you said, okay, well, I got to pay these bills, so I got to get a job that just covers these bills. And you go through that drudgery, if you will, but you're really not fulfilled. Is that part of that learned behavior, or what is that?
Well, I guess, yes, partly is, as people often say, it's wired in our brain, and that depends on what we've been exposed to as children, teenagers, and adults. If we've been in a society, as it happened to me in Italy, where everyone is telling you, that's how it works, don't complain, live your life after 6 p.m., you're already lucky enough if you have a contract. Of course, that becomes your natural way of thinking about things. How can you get out of this? Right. Unless you expose yourself to different ideas, which is exactly what happened in London. I just thought that it would happen more easily and quicker. It took actually a very long time. Actually, let me do something. So it took a very long time for me to understand that I should have made a conscious effort in changing my mindset. Certainly being exposed to a different mentality helped.
Right.
But it was very long. So I know now how to help my clients make the shift quicker. So the problem is, there are a few problems. One of these is that nobody, especially my generation, has thought as how our brain works.
Right.
No, we know, Bob, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you. What does it mean in practice?
Yeah.
And especially the instructions manual, where is it?
Good luck.
So it makes no sense. Yeah, it makes no sense to say that it's extremely powerful if then you don't tell us exactly how to use it. So that's what I do today with my clients. I really have an instructions manual that I wrote over time. It's very practical because there's a lot of talking about neuroscience, but very often is thought in terms of in academic terms. We understand the concept, really powerful, thank you, but it's not very practical.
Right. How do you mesh those two?
Well, I think it comes from the fact that I'm not a neuroscientist. So I've studied a lot. I did some very good courses and studied a lot on my own. But the reality is I am a non-academic person, which, to be honest, at one point I was feeling weak in that sense, because of course you tend to look at your own weaknesses, and not being a neuroscientist, while there are other neuroscientist coaches, you think, I'm missing something. No one will hire me because of that, because I'm not a neuroscientist. But someone made me realize it's exactly the opposite. It's exactly because I'm not a neuroscientist that I'm good at what I do, because I tend to speak in very practical and relatable terms. That's what my clients love, is that they understand it without making effort, because by not getting lost into the details, I tell them what they need to know and understand. And it is incredibly powerful, because when people understand what happens inside, they're much more in control of their behavior. So going back to your question before, there are a number of mistakes. And one of these is not having an instruction manuals
Right.
So we live, the best way we can is observing others, especially family or society, and try to do the same. The second mistake that people often do, and certainly I'm guilty of that, is asking the right question at the wrong moment.
Gotcha.
So the right question is, how am I going to make it?
Right.
So let's say, for example, I'm going to be a coach. When I realized that coaching was exploiting my being,
right,
coaching was the right career for me, not because I liked it or because I was passionate about it, but because to succeed at coaching, certain characteristics are necessary. And they were my gifts. They were not just my skills, they were who I was. So I knew it was the right path. But of course, immediately, fear triggers the question, how are you going to make it? How are you going to pay the bills every month?
And that's before you even get started.
Yeah. The how is a very legitimate question.
Yeah.
It's just the timing, maybe. Let me do my stuff, my training, my path, and so on. And then at the right time, that question will make sense. But perhaps at that moment, I would already be equipped with the answers needed.
Right.
But if you ask, it's like a child. Sometimes, I want to be a singer. How are you going to be a singer? That could be my mom, for example. How could you be a singer? We don't come from a family of singers. How are you going to get there? It's really complicated.
Yeah. You defeat it before it gets started.
Yeah. So the how is a very good question, but has to be postponed at the right time. And then, of course, other mistakes is having the wrong perspective on a career, thinking that you should pursue happiness or passion. I would always recommend to never, ever use passion as a guidance to decide what you're supposed to do. Because like me, you could be passionate about a million things. How do you choose?
Yeah, you're all over the place. Yeah.
So there are many mistakes. I mean, many more than these, and I did all of them, by the way. But I learned the lesson very well. I would say, if we want to give some encouragement to your audience, that if they want to change their career, firstly, it's absolutely possible. Many, many people did it. I am one, but there are many, many others. If other people did it, and we all had the same issues, I don't come from a rich family. I didn't have a husband supporting me. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was my talent, and so on. Despite all that, I did it. Other people did it. It means it's possible.
Right.
So we should rely on evidence. When we say it's possible, it's not possible, what if? I had all the possible problems that someone who wants to change career had, and I made it. So my story is evidence. So let's focus on that to lower the level of fear that such a big change implies.
Well, and that's a great point, because you're talking about it's with today's technology, with, for instance, YouTube, that's a big help. Although it's a simple way, it's a big help to help people overcome that idea of, oh, I can't do something. You can pull up a YouTube video on anything. And my son did it when his alternator on his truck went out. And luckily he was, his truck died next door to a parts store, but he watched a YouTube video while I came out to pay for it. So, and by the time I got the part, he already knew how to do it. So there's that evidence right in front of you that you're able to do something. So you can't say, I can't do it. Otherwise, it's another $400 to have somebody come out, tow the truck to the dealership or a mechanic to get them to fix it and then put in the part. So why does our brain go negative all the time? First thing.
Good question. Actually, is one of those dynamics that are in my instructions manual. We call it fear, and sometimes we call it gremlin, or inner critic, or the monkey, or all these type of names, which I highly encourage to use, because it's much easier to deal with a personification of the problem. In the case of the gremlin, you can talk to the gremlin and understand more about the fear. It's easier for the brain rather than dealing with the obscurity of something unknown that is, lowering our energy, but it's not an entity. So first thing, we need to understand that when we hear that voice, No, you're not going to good enough. How are you going to make it?
Right.
You're going to fail. What tells you that you're going to succeed when nobody did? And so on and on. Let's call it gremlin. It's the personification of fear. Now, fear in practical terms means a production of cortisol.
Right.
Fear is that mechanism that is there for a very good reason. So we don't want to get rid of our gremlin.
Right.
We just want to learn to handle it. But that's there for a very good reason, and that reason is saving our lives. The number one job of the brain is not thinking; it's saving our lives. It's preserving the species.
Right.
So what happens is that mechanism works really, really well. That's why we're alive. Otherwise, Bob, a long time ago, probably as children, we would be gone. The problem with that mechanism, someone probably knows it as the fight or flight or freeze system. Bottom line is the production of cortisol. When cortisol is there, we can't think straight. That's why when you feel fear, you can't really imagine a positive scenario or how you're going to make it. And that's why you should postpone that question. Because when you're under cortisol, your prefrontal cortex, which is the rational side of the brain, can't work properly.
Right.
Now, that mechanism is correct. The problem is that the way the brain works isn't capable of distinguishing between a real danger or a perceived danger.
Right.
What that means is the gremlin will come anyway, just to be sure you're safe. But if you don't have a methodology because you don't understand what's going inside, you just end up being a victim of your own inner critic.
Right.
But actually, maybe it wasn't a real danger. So that's why it's important to own the internal dynamics, especially about how the brain works.
Interesting. And I mean, that's good to remember, because I appreciate the personalizing the fear, if you will. It's not an omnibus thing out there, but it's somebody I love that idea you can talk to, because that's what you're doing. Well, why are you doing that? Why are you making me feel that way? Why are you causing me to feel this? And that's where you start to balance that out of, you know what, I have capabilities. I can do this. I can overcome this. I am, I'm a gift from God. So I have great abilities. And I think that's a great way to, if you will, set that argument with that personified fear. Great example of that. Great.
Because at the end of the day, fear is our obscure side. We all have a dark side, and it's okay. But the problem is, again, nobody taught us how to deal with it. So, for example, I've been a victim of my own gremlin for a very, very long time. And it was speaking, and I was kind of taken for granted. It was true. I never questioned it because nobody told me I was supposed to.
Right.
But when I started doing it, my comfort zone expanded so much that now it comes much more rarely. So I really grew up a lot just by learning how to deal with it. And the good thing of the gremlin telling you that you're not good enough is that it's a voice. Right. Good. Because if it's a voice, we can speak. And again, I'm a fan of evidence. It's just a matter of asking, what's the evidence?
Right.
Because the gremlin thrives, the fear thrives in the darkness.
Right.
So if you're in a dark room, the best thing that you can do when you feel fear is just turn on the light.
Yeah.
And that's what you do by questioning. So it's just a matter of asking, okay, gremlin, thank you for coming and saving my life. I appreciate that. What evidence do you have that I'm going to fail?
Right. Yeah.
And I can promise you, if there's real evidence, your gremlin is going to bring you some points. But if it's just, it will fade away because there's no rational reason. And that comes again from the way the brain works. When we label our emotions and our fears, they tend to lose their grip on us.
Right.
So just talking about this, okay, you're coming here because you feel fearful that I might get into trouble. Let's talk about this. The more you do this, the more that sensation dissipates.
Right.
If it's a real danger, it will stay. If it's a perceived danger, it will go away more quickly.
Right. And that's the thing too with fear, is it's a future scenario that may not come true that we put into our head. Like you said, that evidence is telling you whether it's real or not. So if there's no evidence, is it really going to happen? Can we predict the future? I don't know anybody that really can. So, worrying about it, fearing about it doesn't always do any good. So Great concepts with that. Thank you. Now, it's interesting too, because you talk about in your coaching how you turn managers into leaders. And that is, I think that's critical in our workplace today, because we see so many people that IT is a perfect example. They understand the work, they're technically sound, all that, and all of a sudden they'll get put into a manager level, but they don't know how to lead people. They know how to manage technology, but the people aspect is a whole nother ballgame. And how do you help people to do that? Because I think that's a big one in today's environment, the way things are moving so quickly. We want to be good leaders, and it doesn't have to be in a technical field, but anytime we're in a position that we can lead people, how do you help people to do that?
Very good question. First of all, I'd like to say that my specialization is on human leadership versus the typical business leadership that is very much about revenue. Now, I'm not saying that when you develop a human leadership style, you're not focusing on revenue as well. I'm just saying that the way you do it is different because, again, that's where the knowing how the brain works comes in handy. If you understand the dynamics as let's say you're a new manager, okay, and you really want to grow into a leader, there are a lot of amazing books that can teach you something. But it's very, very difficult to remember what you're supposed to do. It can be overwhelming, because there are so many books you could read, so many things that you can do. I'm not saying that they're not effective. I'm saying that they are overwhelming. I found with my clients in my coaching that it's much more effective to stop all the techniques one moment and let's focus on the basics. Again, that is how the brain works. Because at the end of the day, the brain determines behaviors, our behavior and other people's behavior. So when they understand these dynamics, then all those books and techniques make sense.
Gotcha.
And you don't have to remember all of them because you won't anyway. No. But if you own the process as much as we did now from the gremlin, you will know what to do inherently. And then maybe some memories about books you've read that they might come to your mind. But the reality is you really need to understand human behavior. And when you do this about yourself, you naturally understand other people's behavior because you know what's happening in their brain. Which makes the whole thing much more empathetic. Because you might notice something that you don't like and you tend to judge that person. But if you understand that that behavior is the result either of a brain impairment or brain dynamic that's been triggered by something else, you understand why that person behaves in that way. Perhaps someone that is always negative in the team. You can't go there. If someone is behaving negatively towards others, it's an emotional problem. If you go to that person and you speak rationally, the two things don't match. So you want to understand what happens in the brain of a person that is constantly acting negatively, because that tells you what's the solution.
Gotcha.
And you can act on them. But that's what I mean by human leadership, is understanding human behavior. And the way I see it, the only way is by understanding these dynamics, owning them, seeing them in yourself and in others, so that it will become a different way of interpreting the world, much more realistic.
That's always a good way to look at it too, because I think a lot of times when I speak to some groups in corporate environments, they forget that people are people first. It's like they're there to get a task done. I get that. But they have families, they have kids that are sick, they have parents that are aging, they have things they have to, all that comes with that person doing the work. And you bring up a good point, is that person that you've got a reality, or, the empathy and the what's going on with the person, and then just the mechanics, if you will, of the work. You've got to be able to mesh those two and connect properly. So definitely good information there. When you bring, it's interesting. I was reading a quote that was actually on one of your, it was actually on a slide of a presentation you did. And it said, bring who you are into what you do. Can you tell us more about that? Because I love that quote. That's a great quote.
Yes, actually, so you did your homework. Well done, Bob. I appreciate that. That's also the title of my TEDx talk. I decided indeed when I was invited to do the TED, I chose that topic because it's really the most important to me. And I think that sentence fully explains the whole philosophy that I mentioned before. I mean, what we do in our career is 3/4 of our day.
Yes.
Put it as you like it, but that's the reality, either physically or mentally. Maybe in the past, the previous generations didn't have much choices, but today, the world is crazy enough to offer a job for every single inclination. It's more a matter of, do we know what we really want? And are we capable of finding it in the world or creating it in the world? So the whole point is, firstly, being brave enough to understand that the status quo can be changed. Right. It might be challenging, of course, but it can be changed. And that's why we exist as career coaches, because we help you do that. Firstly, it can be changed. Then someone can tell you how. But the most important thing to remember is what is that you want from the next career. Mm-hmm. And it can be money, location, promotion, or job title. This is important, but it has to come after. Because if you are unfulfilled, you have all these things, but you are unfulfilled, right. This is the straight route to depression. Right. So unfulfillment is not just unpleasant, it's dangerous. Right. And it's the cause of many, many people that we see depressed, especially in finance and banking, that in theory, they have money, they have power, they have beautiful houses. What's to be depressed in that? The thing is, you are a human being. Again, you're not a human doing. You are meant to feel alive, to function at your best. And when you function at your best, you tend to succeed. Right. But the choice of what will make you feel in a certain way has to be done by keeping this journey in mind. So your job, your career must be, if you want to feel alive at work, the expression of your being. Right. So that at work, you express your being through the doing. It comes without saying that job description, salary, location, they cannot determine if you will feel alive or not. Right. So in the career change journey, you have to focus on who you are first, deeply, and knowing way beyond what you think about yourself, and discover what makes you feel alive. And I'm not talking about going out with friends or, watching a movie with your family. No. You really have to discover all your gifts. And generally it's a very, very long list that nobody actually see. Right. So I have a framework where I help people at this stage, and they're always surprised of how many gifts they possess because they had no idea. Right. This happened to me as well. If you ask me, okay, what else could you do? I don't know. I can build websites. Yeah. I had no idea what my gifts were. So that's why it's been a long journey. But once you have a very long list of your gifts, and by gifts, I don't mean just talents. I mean everything that when you use it, you feel great, you tend to succeed at, and somehow it comes natural. When something, ticks these 3 boxes, most likely is a gift. Right. Now, what that means is, when do you feel alive as a human being? When you use your gifts. Right. That for me means bringing who you are into what you do. You use your gifts, of course you feel alive. Right. Because you feel alive, your brain tends to produce the right amount of hormones that will make you go to the peak performance. Right. And that's why those that feel alive at work tend to succeed even financially. It's all a positive cycle, but the first thing is understanding that the logic has to change. It's not about happiness, it's not about passion, it's not about salary. They will come later in the analysis, but the first step is understanding you're meant to be alive, also to preserve your mental and physical health. Right. Otherwise, you're hindering the whole process.
If you're not alive, you can't do a whole lot.
It seems obvious, Bob, and yet we're all so stuck into this. All my clients are stuck into this. And when I show them this, they say, wow, it's so simple. But how come nobody told us? And I don't know, because there's a wrong perspective and it's been, brought ahead over the years. Nobody changed it. Yeah. That's why I'm writing a book about it.
Well, good.
So I'm so proud of that.
And that's, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So
Exactly. Exactly.
that's something. I mean, that's encouraging right there to know that, there's options, there's ability, we have the abilities out there. And, getting somebody like you will help you guide you through the maze so that you can focus on it. I think that's critical of helping people, is helping them to realize it gives them hope, and helping them to realize that direction to go towards is a great talent, and commend you for that. So thank you for doing that. Now, eh, being with the neuroscience, and it's interesting that you say you're not an academic, which can be good, because that does help you connect with people. I know, there's, when people say they're scientists and all that, they think, oh, okay, they're at a different level, and they may be, but it's interesting that you're not. So I think that brings a great perspective into it, because you've bootstrapped your way through this, and that's a great way to learn. You've got the experience. How does that like neuroscience connect with positivity, or encouragement, if you will? Is there something in the brain that helps to connect the two?
Yeah, again, it's about aliveness.
Mm-hmm.
So the brain, basically the way it works is there are two circuits. One is the reward circuit, one is the threat circuit. Positivity means that the brain is more in the reward stage. Okay. There are a lot of things that you can do to keep your brain in a rewarding stage. And that's what great human leaders do. Great leaders are great because they intuitively, they may not have the instruction manuals, but they intuitively know how the brain of other people works. If they're good, what they're doing is doing something that keeps their brain moving more towards the reward stage rather than the threat stage.
Gotcha.
Why? Because when you're on the threat, again, real or perceived, you tend to produce cortisol, which we said, hinders the possibility of the prefrontal cortex to work well. Okay, right. So that's the reason why, for example, micromanaging doesn't work. Right. Because the underlying message of micromanaging is, I tell you what to do because I don't trust your thinking. Right. So that's why you need me to tell you. This, even if it's done genuinely, tends to put the person into the threat state. If they are under threat, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they can, not because they don't believe in themselves, but because they cannot think 100%.
Right.
So great leaders know how to keep the people into a reward state, not because they are generally good people, or not only, but because if you want a winning team, your best bet is when they use 100% of their brain.
Right.
So you have to do everything that you can to put their brain in an internal state that will make them perform at their best. And let me tell you why this is so important, even in terms of revenue. Because again, I don't want to give the message that either you're a human leader interested in growing and creating a psychologically safe environment, or you focus on revenue. In fact, that's why there's a huge investment in the corporate space into emotional intelligence, developing emotional intelligence. Why? They're still interested into revenue, don't worry. Yeah. But they know that especially with all this volatility, the straight route to success is by making the best use of the talent's brain.
Right.
How do we do this? By keeping them into a reward state. But what happens when they are in a reward state? Well, 4 things happen that cannot happen when they are under threat. And that is an enhanced level of perception, right. Intuitively understanding what's going on, creative thinking, problem solving, rational thinking, cognitive functions, and most importantly, a sense of collaboration. Okay. When people are in a rewarding state, these 4 things happen and they feel more collaborative and open. This doesn't and cannot happen when they are feeling under threat.
Right.
So that's why it is so important to understand how the brain works, so you can create the conditions to succeed and improve revenues. And again, it comes from bringing who they are, let them bring who they are into what they do. When they feel safe enough to express themselves, they're making the best use of their brain.
Right, right. Wow. Good reminder. about that. That is so key, because I like that, all those features that come in with reward state. It just makes it that much, like you said, it makes it more productive, person more productive, makes it feel energized. The collaboration helps teams get things done. It expands itself throughout, not only in your life personally, but in the corporate life, for the groups or for whoever your employer may be. Great. Well, you mentioned something about a book coming out. Tell us about that, if you would.
Yeah, thank you. That's another favorite topic of mine. It's taken quite a while because there's so much to do, but I really, really want to expand my reach.
Right.
So when I have, my new clients, they often say what we said before, like, how come nobody told us these things? It's so simple and it's so obvious as well. I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything new. I'm stating what is obvious, but for some reason nobody stated before. When I say, we should change perspective and chase aliveness, not just passion or happiness. So at one point I realized, yeah, I'm making an impact in these people's lives, but this is a big message. And now is the time. Between the Great Resignation in the US, something similar is happening in the UK and in other parts of the world. I mean, if there is a moment where people really need an encouragement and a way, so my book will be very practical.
Right.
I am explaining in my book, my framework, as I said, is divided in 4 stages. The first one is about truly rediscovering who you are. Right. So rediscover your being. The second stage is learning how to handle your fears, the gremlin stuff, and also how to distinguish between the gremlin and your higher self, your positive intuition, because that's the big problem. Which one is right or wrong? So there's an important stage there. Then once you are settled with these, then the next stage is finding a match in the job market. So how do I turn? Okay, I have a clear map of who I am and what makes me feel alive. How do I turn this into a job? And then once the path has been clarified, then the final stage is the transition. So the book, it's about all these. It's partly about changing this perspective. So it's a mind shift. But I would say this, I'm a very practical person, and I developed a lot of tools over the years in this job. I want to put these tools, some of them, because otherwise it will be an encyclopedia, but I want to put some of them into the book. So people who cannot afford the coaching or group coaching, they can still get a lot out of this and do this journey on their own. That's my desire.
Great. Well, and we look forward to that, because this is something people need. I can see that it would be a good tool for younger adults coming out of college, as well as, older ones, like you said, that have been in this, what we thought was the right path, and now maybe it's different, and it's okay for that to be different, and you have a way to help them and guide them along that journey. So great job with that.
Thank
now,
you.
where can people find out more about you, your website, and all that? We want to make sure we get that information out.
Yes, so my website is www.brunadepalo.com, and I am building this other website, which is called www.thecareerchangemaker.com. It will be live in a few days, so maybe when the podcast will be live, it's already there. And it's a website fully dedicated to career change. So there will be a blog with interviews of people who made it. Again, I'm passionate about evidence. So reading stories about normal people, not those who claim that they were sleeping under a bridge and now super millionaires, not that kind of stories. Right. So these are mostly my clients who made it. There will be a shop. Those who cannot afford a group coaching setting, they can still buy some tools to help them along the journey.
Oh, great.
And then there will be this offer. It's a group coaching setting. It's a very special one. It's very rich because there's a lot of support. In a few sessions, we'll guide people from A to Z, like, okay, I am unfulfilled, but I have no idea what else I can do, to finally knowing exactly what career, what industry, what's the pitch, what's the CV, and so on and on and on. So really a journey from A to Z.
Wow, great. That's great. And we'll make sure we get all that in the show notes so people have that, because that's important, so they can follow up with you. Because there's a plethora of information that you're offering, and I definitely want to make sure people understand that they have that, capability to contact you for all this. Well, Bruna, I want to say thank you for being a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast today. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the information. The enlightenment you offer people is great, and really look forward to hearing more of what comes out from your website, from your book, and what you do. I really appreciate it. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Bob. Truly my pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Bye-bye.